I was born in Tehran, Iran. I moved to Germany at the age of 13. Boys aged 14 and older are not allowed to leave the country. I did not speak a word of German. I felt that I had been thrown into the cold water.
Welcome, Navid. Certainly, most executives don't fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because they basically misread pressure. And you've operated at the highest level of corporate leadership and built and scaled organizations. So I'm very interested in speaking to you about that. And you now work with executives navigating the most difficult moments, I suppose, of their careers. I'm really glad to have you here because, like we've exchanged emails and that, our worlds do overlap. And basically, pressure just uses a different uniform, either business or sport. And so I think this is going to be a fascinating conversation. So let's get straight into it. And just give me a movie trailer of your life and what shaped you.
Wow. Okay, you want to go right in the deep end that I love. So, David, I was born in Tehran, Iran, and I moved to Germany at the age of 13. It was an overnight decision by my parents. At that time, the war between Iran and Iraq was ongoing for about 6 years. And it had started to move from what used to be the western border of the country into the capital and further to the east. And the government announced a new law that week that boys aged 14 and older are not allowed to leave the country by legal means because it was a precautionary step to make sure that they don't run out of troops eventually. So I remember that day very vividly, David. I came home from school, and the first question I asked my parents is if someone had died, because that's how it felt like being home, which is very different than the warm and cozy and nurturing and nourishing home that I used to know. And so my mom said, no, nobody has died. Please sit down, have your lunch, but we need to talk. And this we need to talk eventually led into this, news broken to me. And the fact that my parents had decided, having thought about it for the last day and a half, that Germany is the best place to send me to. Now, it was interesting because I did not speak a word of German. I had been to Germany once as a 6-year-old on holiday, but that was it. And so, that's, talking about defining moments in your life, and sometimes without you doing, that was one of the first defining moments because I felt that I had been thrown into the cold water without necessarily being able to swim properly or having had any real instructions before. And that's really how it felt like for me to move from Iran to Germany in the first year. And things really started to move up from there because my
Did you
parents...
go to a boarding school, or how did that work?
I went to a regular school, and it was bizarre, David, because I had, for instance, French being taught to me and explained to me in German. Neither of those languages I did speak at the time. So I was pretty good at school in Iran. The Asian system is very competitive. I was one of the best in the whole country, and that gave my auntie and my parents back home the confidence that I would eventually come out succeeding. It took me 3 years to get there, but hey, I will look at it as one of those life's lessons and one of those resilient moments where I had to persevere and just manage through. And I'm really happy I did that. But that was like an early moment in my life where I really saw that nothing is really predictable the way I had gotten used to it. And then later, when I finished my school, I did not want to study immediately. And that was a big surprise to my parents because both of them had academic degrees. My mom had a PhD, my dad had a master's degree. And the fact that I had a very good, diploma, as they say, Abiturzeugnis in German, to show. I could have studied anything essentially, but the fact that I did not want to study was a bit of a surprise to them. But at that time, I felt that after 15 years of going to school, I was done with learning and books and reading, and I really
Yeah, and I mean,
wanted to get
and the
into.
added strain of having to learn basically two languages, just
Yes,
phenomenal from such a
yes.
young age.
But that really was a blessing in hindsight. I
Yeah.
mean, I had French and German that I had to learn. English was the only language that I speak a little when coming to Germany. So, and that's the German system. You have to learn two foreign languages if you want to go for higher education. And so that's what I did. And anyhow, so I wanted to get right into the world of work. That was really my fascination. And I did that for about 4 years before I then came back and studied and then went on to embark on an international career in the human resources function for 20 years, spanning across 5 countries and, yeah, 7 companies at the time.
I mean, an amazing story, and obviously Iran very much a topic at the moment. Yeah, I remember that whole time very well because growing up in South Africa, the Shah of Iran actually sent students all around the world to get an education, and South Africa was actually a very big target for what we called Persian students at the time. In fact, my sister dated one of these students. So, Iran was very, very topical in quite a lot of conversations at the time. So you missed the whole revolution thing as well, having left that early. So looking back, I mean, you obviously forged a huge growth mindset very, very fast. But did this mindset ever actually cost you before it helped you?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would put it like that, but I really saw that early on. I believe that performance alone will carry me. This is the rookie mistake I made when I started to work eventually, and I had a fabulous start. I started with Adidas, a fantastic company, and that was my very first HR role. I really fell in love with HR, and that's why I wanted to move into HR. But I really learned over the years that if you really want to grow, and the coaching school that I went to is also based in South Africa. They call it the Center for Coaching. I really learned that, and they speak about horizontal versus vertical growth or horizontal versus vertical development. That if you want to grow vertically, you need to expand the size of the container. So it's not really about functional and technical and all those good things that we sometimes have to learn to get good at something. But really, my belief is that, and I had to learn it the hard way, that vertical development or growth requires adaptability, it requires self-awareness, it requires resilience. And so over time I have come to appreciate traits like curiosity and discipline and the ability to stay calm even though the world seems to be on constant pressure all around you. So these have been far more important to me than raw capability or functional technical skills.
Yeah, and I think the calmness, certainly in sport, comes from two things. One is having the confidence that you can deal with anything that's thrown, any adversity that's thrown your way, which allows people to be calmer if you're pretty confident that you can deal with anything that's thrown your way. And then secondly, learning how to manage your thoughts and I'd say and manage your emotions when stuff goes wrong, and that allows you to stay calm and think. The emotion will hit and maybe you'll be a bit uptight or something like that, but then very quickly to reset and start to think, okay, what's the pathway forward, what's the next step? And if you can get to the experience and get to a place where you can do that quickly, it's hugely valuable. Am I really speaking the same language there as you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what you just said reminds me of some of my clients and some of my own experience of just before stepping into the boardroom to have a very difficult conversation about something that is going to be rattling the nerves and, creating a lot of emotion. So, I find it more helpful if you are grounded in the way you articulate the case and let it to be voted on rather than being emotionally taken by it and kind of transcending this nervousness and the energy and that certainly is not going to make for a great conversation and a great decision, which is the ultimate, gain in a boardroom.
Yes, I mean, it's always very dangerous when you speak from emotion, but it's very interesting. Sometimes emotion, and you got to kind of get the instinct for this, sometimes emotion can carry the day. Like it's just an injection of something that moves people, but you got to be very careful. I think when you inject emotion, it's to move people rather than to try and influence them. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does.
So, what kind of drives you now? You've got so much experience, and you working, with I'm sure some very good people. And maybe I know you've spoken about this. Is what did you kind of used to chase that you've outgrown now?
I guess, see, I qualified on a psychometric called the Hogan assessment, which was set up by Dr. Robert Hogan many, many years ago, many decades ago. And there is one of the 28 scales in this diagnostic that is called ambition. And my ambition scale score is 100, which is the absolute maximum you can score. Now, I would say, David, that the way I put this is, over the last 2 or 3 decades, it's not that my ambition has lowered in any form or shape, but the how to get to that has really fundamentally shifted for me. So if I wanted to give you a very silly example, and you will relate to that, it was during my coach education training in Cape Town, South Africa, at the GIPS UCT, where we were given the task to, just for a month, try out this thing called meditation. And, mind you, that at that time, it was not quite so hip and en vogue as it is these days. And so I thought to myself, oh my goodness, 30 times 20 minutes, right? If I wanted to look at it as a time contingent, how many emails would I be able to ship? How many books would I be able to read? How many different things would I be able to do? Because I really looked at it as a task that is stealing time away from me. Now, that was 12 years ago. 12 years in, I have not given up my homework of this 1 month long experimental meditation, but it has become a daily habit of mine. So I think that is a very simple example of me explaining that I have come to appreciate things that I just couldn't comprehend at the time. And over the years, I've learned things that really help me to, be at my best, and so that I can serve everyone around me, whether it's my family, whether it's friends, or whether it's my clients, to the best of my capabilities.
If I'm understanding you correctly, you're linking that very much to a daily meditation practice.
Absolutely. Yes.
Very interesting. I mean, there's so many elite performers who meditate regularly or daily, and they attribute so much to that. How long did it take you before you start to really feel the benefits? Because 20 minutes is a long time to start with.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. But I think for me, the switch came 2.5 weeks into the daily thing. So it really, the first week I was essentially brainstorming whilst I was pretending to meditate, right? I had all these thoughts, and I was, I was very happy that I found a way that I could be compliant with my homework and still get my stuff done. So I would start with, obviously with my eyes closed and the sound in the background, thinking about what I need to get done today or tomorrow, depending on the time of the day I was meditating, and whether I had everything I needed, whether the presentations were ready, whether I had done this, I've spoken to this person. And so I really, did it the wrong way for about a week. And then I came back because we were asked to report back how is it going. And I said, I have to be honest, I don't think I've meditated a minute of those, 7 times 20 minutes because I have been brainstorming. And so this is where my coach education trainer said, okay, there are several techniques. How about you try any one of these? And one of them was you literally visually open a window, take your thoughts, put them out, and close the window so that you can come back to what really matters at the time, which is nothing. And so it took me another week or so, week and a half, to really get to that point, to be able to really sit still and just do nothing. I mean, just breathe, that's it. And then the shift came for me where I really saw, oh my goodness, this is not a waste of time at all. As a matter of fact, I mean, it really grounded me in a way that I wasn't able to do with exercise or anything else, nutrition and so on. So it became a daily habit of mine, and it's been a daily habit for 12 years plus since then.
Very interesting. I love the analogy of the door because I think that's something that I have struggled with a lot, where you try to focus on the breathing, but keep having the planning thoughts, the like you say, the brainstorming thoughts.
The logical brain taking
Yeah,
over.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and very, very difficult. I had a period in Mexico where I had a guided meditation and it was on the beach. And I did that for a week solid. And that was the first time I really started to feel the benefits. But I do find it really difficult to do on my own. And I think it's something that, having spoken to you, I need to persevere with for longer and get to that place where I can do it for myself.
For sure. And if you don't mind, David, two
Yeah.
more routes to the solution. So that was one of the examples that you shared with me. The second one was to use a guided meditation app, which means that you're just paying attention to someone else who's speaking, right? Similar to what you said, you do not have just to sit still by yourself, but you're listening to someone, following their instructions. And the app that I use is called Insight Timer. It's one of the early meditation apps. It's a wonderful app, and I have used that app, as I said, for all these years. And they
And it's
have
called Inside Time.
Insight Timer, and it's a wonderful app where you can both. There's also a paid version, but the basic version usually does it. If you don't want to, if you don't have to listen to your meditation when you're on a plane where you don't have
Yeah.
Wi-Fi and so on. And then the third method, which was another way I tried, it just didn't work for me so well, was to name what comes up for you. So if it's a thought, without speaking, you just name it. Say, oh, a thought came up, and just come back to where you were before. And then if it's like a concern or a worry, you just name it. You say, oh, another worry. And so by doing that, you call yourself in the moment doing things you're not actually supposed to do. So those are the three routes: the window open, thoughts out, window closed. Second one is follow a guided meditation in an app or anywhere else. And the third one is to name what comes up for you, and just do not be judgmental about it. Just to name it and carry back with whatever you were doing before, breathing work or just sitting
Well,
still.
that makes absolute sense because in coaching, naming something is very, very powerful. So, give me the one person who probably changed how you think the most, or one idea that's really changed how you operate. Obviously, the meditation is a huge part of it. Is there another idea that changed how you operate? And is there a person who really, really influenced how you think?
Absolutely. I think I have too many, far too many to mention. But if I wanted to pick one of my earliest mentors I had, this was a guy called Michael Klein in Germany. So I had a 6-year career in sales. Those, 4 to 6 years, I dipped my toe into work before going to study and coming to HR. And I had literally no clue as to how to sell. And they hired me as a sales associate in a retail outlet. You have to imagine this to be something similar to Foot Locker. It was just called differently. It was international
Yeah.
sports trading. And so I had the easy task of selling, trainers, shirts, trousers, all sorts of different things to customers. And I approached him in my first week and said, Michael, in all honesty, I mean, you guys have hired me as a, earliest, lowest level junior salesperson. I really don't know how to sell. And so I'm looking for advice. And he said, hey, great. I mean, some associates never approach me to get advice. They just try to wing it. So it's great. It's a great sign you're actually coming to me to asking for how you can be more effective in selling. And he said, there's only two things you need to do. And I guarantee that if you follow those two advices of mine deeply, you will be one of the best salespeople we have in this firm. And so the first one was, you don't have to be great at anything, really. All you need to commit to is to do a little better tomorrow than you did today. So for him, it was all about incremental improvement. There was no single big lever, like a magical something, like a pill you take and then suddenly you become the super sales agent. No. But it's really having the ambition and the motivation to do a little better tomorrow than you did today. So that was the first one. And the second one was, and he cited a very famous example at the time. This is a very popular guy. I forgot his name. He is the best car sales person on the planet, American guy.
Was it
And
Lee
he wrote,
Iacocca?
yeah, maybe, or someone else of that importance. But anyhow, so he said, you have to put yourself into the shoes of your customer truly. And by that, it means if a customer walks up into our store and they want to buy, let's say, a Lacoste polo shirt, and we do not have Lacoste polo shirts listed. We have only Polo Ralph Lauren and, I don't know, Hugo Boss and what have you. Your task is to tell them where they can get that polo shirt, and not to ask them what color would you like to have it. And if they say black, you just pull out a black polo shirt from a different brand and say, hey, this would look really good on you. Why don't you try that one on? And so believe it or not, I had customers that I sent away because they wanted to have the New York Yankees hat or something and we just did not have in stock. They would come back and buy through me something else because they really felt that the honest advice they received at the time was so rare and so positive in their opinion that warranted some kind of a loyalty on the back end. So I became very quickly one of the best, and this is what I loved about the world of sales. It's very transparent. It's like the world of sports. You know how good you are every single day, every week, every month, every year.
Rankings
You
don't
look
lie.
at the rankings, you know, the sales leaderboard, you know how good or how terrible you're doing. And that really set me up for a wonderful career in sales that lasted for about 6 years.
That's some great advice there. I mean, again, getting back to authenticity, by giving them the information that they needed pays off in the long term. My next question for you is, when stakes are really high and you don't have, obviously, you can never have complete information. So you're having to kind of go by information and instinct. What actually runs in your head? The reality. So you're faced with a difficult decision and you don't have all the information. How do you kind of process a decision like that?
I mean, if it's a big decision that requires a lot of data, I run my life when it comes to important decisions on Excel spreadsheets. Sounds a bit boring, but that just does it for me. Whether it's purchasing a new home, moving to a new country, choosing the school for our son, or something of that nature, that really warrants for me more than just, oh, my heart tells me I should do this, and then maybe I had a bad day and my heart told me the wrong thing. And so whilst I believe in the power of intuition, I think big decisions, important decisions, hard decisions require thinking time and require also some reflection. And so that's how I usually go about making those choices. And, if I wanted to use a concrete example, this is the year 22. At the height of my career, I was the global head of HR working for a company called Vodafone, which is called Vodacom in South Africa. And I looked after 27,000 employees in 24 markets. So I was really like, there was only one more role I could aspire to in the company. My book launched, and to my success, and I think it's fair to say also much to my publisher's surprise, it was such a sensational success that I had all this energy coming my way, David. I mean, random people sending me emails and sending me LinkedIn messages to say, hey, I got these 10 leaders who would love to be coached by you. Would you come and consider them to be your clients? We have our Global Leadership Conference coming up on this date and this month. Would you be happy to come along and be a speaker? We have this, we have that. I have a podcast also. I would like to invite you to be a guest on my show. And I realized very quickly, David, that I was very successful as a corporate executive HR leader. And it more than paid for the bills, the mortgage, the lifestyle and everything you had. But this energy that I sense as a result of this book was a unique moment in time. It's not something you can put on a back burner and say, hi, David, no problem. I will come on your show in 3 years' time. How about we schedule that now? It's either now or never. And that was really a hard choice for me to make because I was successful. I had a highly paying, position. I had a fantastic resume. And despite that, I really had to think about whether there is another career ahead of me, one that I didn't even think about 2 years prior. And so that's what I ultimately decided to do, which is I resigned. I had a 6 months notice period in January. The book had this incredible success. I resigned, so I rolled off in the summer of the same year. Decided where to move with my family, which ultimately became the UAE and Dubai. And it's been now almost 4 years, in 2 months, in 3 months, it will be 4 years. And I never looked back. I
mean, that's so interesting. But would you say the data of the book sales and the incoming requests and that was the main driver, or was it your intuition that, obviously
It wasn't
backed
really,
up by the fact that you obviously knew that you could make a living doing this?
Yes. Well, I didn't even know if I can make a living. That was the
Yeah.
hard choice I had to make, right? And in our family setup, I'm the only breadwinner. So I didn't have the luxury of saying, oh, you know what? If I don't have an income for 2 years, that's also fine. We just, use my wife's income. And so that was the hard thing. And I have shipped, 10,000 copies in 4 years. So it's a lot, but it's not enough to live from.
No. You never make
So,
a living out of a
yeah.
book unless you're
So exactly. I mean,
the
I
bestseller.
have the privilege of owning the copyrights of my book, so I make a
Yeah.
decent margin on every
Yeah.
single sale. But despite that, you will not be able to buy houses with
No.
10,000 books sold. So that was the hard choice I had to make, which is okay. I had been coaching on the side for about 8 years at the time. For the first 3 years, I gave away my coaching entirely for free to Vodafone leaders all around the world. And then when I moved into London, I decided that I wanted to give this to external clients for money. And so I knew that I could be successful, but again, between thinking you can be and actually being, there's a bit of a gap. And that's what it all resulted into. I mean, it really took off quite quickly. And as I said, I never had to look back. But that was a choice that I may have regretted a year or two in, to think, oh my goodness, I had the most amazing career. I was one of the highest paid executives in the company. I put it all away for this amazing book, but it's just not enough. And the coaching is not enough, and everything else is not enough. And maybe I made the wrong choice to come to the UAE. Maybe you should have stayed in the UK. And so those are the hard choices you make. But as I said, I'm incredibly grateful that it all worked out very well for me, personally and professionally.
Well, I'm pleased, given that this is your 100th podcast as a guest. It's an honor to be that 100th podcast for you. But I think having made that decision, your expertise and knowledge can be shared to so many more people than just purely in one company.
Absolutely. And, on my vision board at the time, David, this is, in the middle of the pandemic. You have to remember those were strange times, right? Where I had 12 Zoom calls every day, and it just was not a great time. And it gave me time to reflect on what I want to do next. It gave me the book, in a very nice way, forced my hand around. Okay, what would I like to do for the next 20 years to come? And, I was about to turn 50 in that year as well. And so it coincided nicely with all those, life's critical moments. And I had on my vision board one statement, which I had, cut out from a magazine at the time. And that statement said, if not now, when? And I really sat with that statement for a few days and a few weeks until I realized it
And I assume the
probably
meditation helped with that.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, the meditation really grounded me in whatever I was doing. But yeah, having a vision and having an inspiration and an idea around what the next 10 or 20 years might hold for you is also important.
Was there a specific moment where it just clicked and you went, okay, yes?
Yeah, I guess it was that's what I learned at Vodafone actually. I partnered with the finance function, and those finance folks were very smart. So smart that most of our chief executive officer appointments came from the finance leaders, which is unlikely. I mean, any other company I've worked for, CEOs, most common, are hired from the commercial functions, sales, marketing, sometimes from technology functions, occasionally from finance. But in Vodafone, most of our CEO appointments were finance leaders previously. And what they had agreed with the commercial teams was that because, commercial teams have a gazillion great ideas any given day, right? That's what they're paid
Yeah.
to come up with. And so Vodafone had this hard rule that whatever the suggestion is that the marketeer is suggesting or the commercial leader is suggesting to be discussed and agreed upon, in that table of what is the expected revenue, the expected profit, the market share, what have you, is also a column called the do nothing scenario, right? Which is a very wise thing by the CFO who put it in place at the time, because yeah, I mean, if you went down the rabbit hole of every single marketeer's idea, you're probably not going to get far, because you're running down a gazillion different holes in different directions. And the doing nothing scenario really was for me the ultimate, information I needed, which is like, okay, life is good right now. I really wouldn't want to change anything other than maybe probably working a little less, spending a little more time with our young son at the time. But that other approach can give me all that. And if it doesn't work out in a year or 2 years' time, I can always go back to corporate. Which was like, if I did nothing, well, I know already what it's like. But if I did this and it worked out, what is the upside? And if it doesn't work out, well, what is the scenario looking for me? And the scenario was very, very manageable. And so that's why I, went in without really thinking too much more about it.
Brilliant. What piece of leadership advice that maybe sounds smart that you've heard a lot but is actually dangerous or just a myth and nonsense?
That you can transition successfully at the executive level in a 90-day period, which goes back to this wonderful book that was written by Michael Watkins, The First 90 Days. It suggests that you just sit on your hands, do nothing, then start running like crazy on day one, and then you can drop the ball on day 90 and you're good.
Okay. Do you have a little example of that backfiring badly?
Oh
Where
yeah,
maybe
I mean, I
to solve it?
I tried to implement that advice myself. In the year 2008, when I came to London, I was having my big promotion. Came with a company called BAT to London, which is partly owned by the Rupert family in South
Yeah.
Africa. And the operations director gifted me that book and said, hey, this is a great book. He had like 20 copies of this book on his shelf. And he said, every time we have a new senior leader, I just give them a copy. And I loved the idea of the first 90 days. It just doesn't work, David. And this is what compelled me to write my book. Because I think the first 90 days is a fantastic book that's written for a first-time manager or an individual contributor, right? If you wanted to be more structured, more intentful about your role, fabulous. The first 90 days will absolutely do it for you. But if you are the CEO, the CFO, the CMO, the CHRO, CTO, or whatever C-suite leader title you hold, do not expect to transition successfully before a 12 to 18 months time period. And when I then started to do the research and I then came up with my own framework, which ultimately, forms a major part of my book, the double diamond framework, it consists of 7 phases that last 12 to 18 months. Only one of those 7 phases is the first 90 days. So that is one of the biggest myths that I am trying to bring or bust, let's say, in an American way, and that many of the other authors who have now published books in the same arena are also trying to bust at the same time as a myth.
Brilliant. Where do executives, in your experience, lie to themselves the most?
I guess I'm not sure I would call it a lie, but I would say sometimes there is this inherent belief that if you have been successful previously, in some magical way, it guarantees your success going forward. And it really, resonates with what one of my mentors, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, wrote in one of his books. I mean, that gentleman has published 42 books, 45 books. I don't know exactly what the number is, but that single book, David, has outsold all the other books of his. And that book is titled, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And there's something really fundamentally true about that, which is what I know as an HR leader to be true, which is past success rarely guarantees future success. And that's, one of these pieces of advice I would like to share with any executive that may believe that, they have figured out the playbook, and if they draw the playbook and just play it all over again, they will just be automatically successful. Unfortunately, it takes a lot more effort and a lot more thinking than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's very, very interesting. In sport, I talk a lot about this, is so many athletes will make it and they basically create their success formula. But of course, sport constantly evolves, and it comes a point where a decision has to be made. Do you actually throw out your success formula and build a new one, which is very, very scary, because, if you're, number 10 in the world, highly successful, and you have this success formula of a way of operating, and you want to get to top 5, and clearly your success formula is not good enough to get there, you have to then make that decision is, am I kind of happy staying around 10 in the world, or do I really want to go for it and throw out my success formula and try and create a new one? It's interesting. I mean, there are athletes who have done that. I remember Nick Felder, after winning one major, reworked his whole swing, because David Ledbetter said, you're not going to win. You're not going to be a multiple major winner with the swing the way it is. And he chose to take that risk. But then there have been others who don't take that risk. And
yeah.
But people think, of course, take the risk. But it's actually not that easy, because you could take the risk and everything could fall apart and you end up 40 in the world. So
yes.
And of course that's a lot of status, a lot of money, a lot of things that go with that. So it's not as easy a decision as people think.
For sure. And what that brings up for me is a documentary I watched on this basketball player called Stephen Curry. And he did something as a young boy. His dad, who was a basketball coach, told him that if he really wanted to up his game, he needed to, rework his entire shooting technique. And he spent weeks trying to learn it the right way, only to failing to, hit those balls into the net. And so his mom was interviewed as part of the documentary, and she said, I saw how frustrated he was every single day, because he was trying to get it right. And it was like the old way that wouldn't allow him to do it entirely correctly, and the new way not fully embedded yet, so that he couldn't just see the results. And, it would have been easy for him to say, what, Dad, I've done this for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Yeah. It clearly is not getting anywhere. And so why don't I go to the tried and proven tested that still gets me great results? Yeah. Maybe not outstanding results, but that's still better than this crap that I am seeing as a result of you, showing me the new thing. And so, there are many, many examples like that.
Yes. I often say that the best are the most relaxed and bravest. And And I think sometimes these really brave decisions are what distinguish, the very top from the rest. Again, in everything that you've seen, what behavior do you think kills trust fastest in a leadership team?
Yeah, I think trust is can be a real game changer, in a positive and also in a negative way. And I use a particular instrument when I work with entire leadership teams. So I do, but if I look at the 100% of my coaching time, 80% I coach executives through career transitions, as and when they land a big job, or as and when they land a job that's bigger than the previous one they had. And then the other 20%, I work with entire leadership teams. And I call them intact teams. So there must be an intact leadership team, a team that interacts with one another on a daily basis. And there I use the Hogan instrument. And the other instrument I use is from a gentleman called Dr. Patrick Lencioni. And he wrote the other great book that I would recommend to your listeners, which is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And he has this pyramid, which is his high-performing team model framework. And the core element, like the lowest layer of that pyramid, it consists of 5 layers, is trust. And believe it or not, David, I mean, I have done this exercise with probably 10 executive leadership teams so far. Trust is one that we always have to work on, either because it's deep in the red, which means it's clearly not established well in this particular leadership team, or because it's yellow, which means there are at least a couple of the members of this leadership team who are not completely trusting either the rest or sometimes individual members of the same team. So trust is a game changer, both in a positive and or in a negative way.
Let's expand a little bit more on the negative. Is that the lack of trust is the big negative?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes, yes. You could say it's a lack of trust, and again, it's difficult. I get it, right? I mean, trust is not something, you may think of trust to be there, and that's perfect. But if you have your very first sign that your trust has been, broken or
Yeah.
not done properly, the lack of trust, that's what is the downside of it, right? I mean, you have, you see this in leadership teams where someone has joined and he or she is very hesitant to ask for help because the vibe and the energy and the kind of tone that he or she is picking up from the rest is like, just get on with your stuff,
Yeah.
right? Don't bother me at all. You sometimes see a lack of trust when team members have difficulties to admit their own shortcomings, right? And again, I have seen that in particular settings. And I think there's a bit of a dynamic with the line manager being in the room, but despite that, even peers not admitting their own, shortcomings to one another. And you see sometimes a lack of trust resulting in top team members avoiding one another. So they always see one another in the boardroom, in the steerco meeting, in the whatever monthly leadership team meeting, and there is zero interaction above and beyond that. I recently worked with a gentleman who thought of himself, he was a chief sales officer of an industrial business, to be too senior to socialize with his peers. And when his boss gave him that feedback with me in the room, it was really embarrassing for him to even admit that this is the reason why he's not, mixing and mingling with his peers, because he thinks of himself to be far too senior. And so there's all sorts of different aspects and signals you can pick up, but a lack of trust is really the greatest hinderer or the greatest hindrance to a top team trying to get into the high performing zone.
So that might have answered my next question, where I was going to ask, what do high performers get wrong when they step into leadership? And is that not establishing trust?
Mm-hmm. It can be trust, but according to research, and I have to cite the research of my book here, the top 3 group reasons for executive transition failure are down to people, politics, and culture. And so it's not the functional or the technical or the lack of those that gets in the way. It's to do with what we in HR oftentimes refer to as the soft skills that are so hard to learn. And of course, trust touches upon all three aspects of these.
And if you had one sentence for leaders under pressure to help them, what would that sentence be?
I guess it would be to invest in preparedness, not in prediction.
Oh, I like that. Invest in preparedness, not in prediction.
Which, by the way, is not my own. It's from a gentleman called Nassim Taleb. But I really like the idea that every single transition is like a new task. And so you have to approach it with a curious mind. Of course, you may have embodied experience that will serve you well, and that's great. Yeah. But never assume that, oh, well, I know already how that's going to work. I know already how this board meeting is going to go. I know already how the voting is going to turn out. Well, you may be surprised.
Well, I think that's a wonderful note to end off on, unless there's anything specific last message you'd like to give the listeners before it's your turn to put me in the hot seat.
Well, I just wanted to say, I mean, you were speaking, so I didn't want to interrupt you. It's my true honor to be a guest on your show, David, as a loyal fan, and being able to be a guest is a real honor. And I just wanted to thank you for hitting the 100s, spot. Yeah. I really, really appreciate that. Good.
Thank you very much. And if anybody, really wants to reach you, I know we've got all your handles and everything like that, but where can they, just audio now? Just
LinkedIn is the best place to find me. And it's my first surname, Navid Nazemian. That's usually, I manage my own LinkedIn account. I'm very friendly and I do not use bots or VAs to respond. So people want to reach me, they can easily do that.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks for watching Locker Room Power with David Sammel. If you enjoyed the episode, hit subscribe and leave a comment on your favorite platform. See you in the next one.